Welcome to Exploring Digital with Purr, a podcast for entrepreneurs and CEOs who want their businesses to benefit from a digital-first approach. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Exploring Digital with Purr. I'm joined today by Gareth Main, who's the Director of Growth and Marketing at Elder. Hi, Gareth.
Hi, how you doing?
Really well, and you?
Yeah, very well. Obviously busy, coronavirus care company, always a joy.
And I guess I'll kick us off by congratulating you and Elder on your recent title of, is it 9th fastest growing startup in the UK? Is that right?
That is correct, yeah. It's still another 8 places to go. But yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's really good to ran down to the newsagent to buy the copy of the Sunday Times the day it came out. It's excellent.
That's a good one for the CV. So how long have you been in this role? Is it about a year, just under since?
Yeah, in this role since January this year, so what's that, 9 months now. I joined Elder in March last year, so I've been here, a year and a half now. So that's previously head of growth, now, yeah, long.
And that was that pretty much around the same time as Elder's Series B funding came through?
Yeah, so we closed off Series B at the end of last year, so it was the day of our Christmas party, essentially. And yeah, so it made the party much more fun. And then then we announced it publicly in January. So it's round about the same time.
So yeah, really exciting and fast-paced growth year for the business. Obviously, round about, I think it's probably about 6 months ago now, we started working on the new Elder website together. And then launched that and seen all sorts of innovations, and it's great to see that contributing towards this new title of 9th fastest growing, and as you say, 8 places to go. So we'll do a very quick call and response style, one word response to some ideas I'm going to give you, and we'll see how that works. So if you can, in 1 or 2 words, describe Elder.
Caring.
Gareth Main.
Yeah, that's a tricky one, but I'll go with caring as well.
Your team.
In an absence of saying they're caring, as we all are, they are exceptional.
And your work.
Tough.
Who wouldn't you take to a desert island?
Probably Piers Morgan. I'm like a chronic introvert, so someone who talks a lot is not for me. And I used to work at The Guardian, and I'm a pretty wet liberal, so someone like that would just be, I'd end up drowning them, I think.
You could always do the Jeremy Clarkson thing and punch him on the plane going there.
That's show my dominance. Could do, but I'm a lover, not a fighter, for sure.
Good. Favourite movie?
I'd go with probably La Vita Bella. Life is Beautiful.
Fantastic film. Least favourite book?
Oh, least favourite book. I'll probably go with Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. That book it's not particularly bad so much, but it's just very long, and it sort of doesn't need to be so long. It could do with like a massive edit to it, and it would be mildly enjoyable. But yeah,
one where you feel you've wasted your time slightly.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people who can't stop something. That's, if I'm watching a film or reading a book or doing anything sort of with arts or creative, I have to sort of see it out just in case it turns on its head at the end. And so when you're reading I think that's about 1400 page book, and you get a third of the way through, you're like, this is going to be a real car crash. This is a real waste of my time. That is that book for me, especially when like loads of my friends recommended it to me as well. It makes it much worse.
You never talk to those people again. Speaking of Friends, would you rather watch Friends or How I Met Your Mother?
I've never seen How I Met Your Mother, so Friends would have to be it. And
what's the latest how would you describe the care sector in its current form?
In a word, they're probably convoluted is what I would go with.
Well, I think it's a really interesting springboard for our next point. So, I mean, this series that of our podcast, we're really focusing on innovation and innovative companies. The care sector in the UK in particular has been so behind for so many years. It's been this poison chalice that's been passed from government to government, and People not really coming up with a really innovative strategy with how to deal with things. This year in particular, it's been discussed with more vigor, and I guess hopefully more of a commitment to actually resolving things longer term. Private companies have been involved for many years, but elders are really taking a new approach to how to look at things, I guess. And how would you describe the innovation at Elder and what that's meant for the care sector?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Innovation at Elder. We sort of talk about ourselves as a tech-enabled care company, and it really is just about using technology to make things better within the care sector. So, more tangible examples. It's about the speed of which we could get people into the home. It is about caring for people. It's about providing clarity as well for people. One of the things that's probably obvious to everyone listening to this is that when you are about to put a loved one into care, or you realize that they need 24-hour care, it's incredibly stressful, incredibly emotional, incredibly difficult. And what the care sector at the moment brings is more questions and more caveats, because it's so highly regulated as it needs to be. But it just means that it's sort of a quagmire for people to go through to try and understand what they need, what the best solution is for them. And when people are in that stress and under that sort of pressure, they often fall back on the option that isn't necessarily the best for the person who requires care. In a classic example, this is the care home. So, 97% of us want to stay at home when we get older, and we want to be cared for within the family. But, the market for the care home in the UK is worth £16 billion, and the living care market is worth just under 400 million. So that there's a massive disconnect there between what people want to do and what they end up doing. And that is where we need to essentially reinvent what it means to age, is ensuring people can do what they want to do as they get older, and not become this problem that gets essentially farmed out into a care home, which, we don't position ourselves as anti the care home, but pro people. And care homes provide an incredibly important part of the care sector in the UK, but most people don't want to go there. So we need to enable that for them.
So it's trying to use technology to really, provide what more people want as this service, this opportunity for live-in care. And I guess because the downside of a care home is that someone is sent off somewhere and they are effectively removed from society in a way, and it's trying to keep someone part of that society, part of that family, and using technology to improve that process.
Exactly.
So how much would you say of Elder's work and model is technology based, and how much is traditional, placing a carer in a home and that's the service you provide?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's something I'm not going to put percentage terms on it, because it is a real hybrid model, in the sense that caring, everyone requires completely different levels of care. Every case is unique. And that requires human intervention, in the sense that, you really have to understand the personality of people. You really need to understand their particular conditions, their particular circumstances. The issue is, and the reason why this probably hasn't worked at scale in the past, is that, humans are expensive by nature, and they only have so much cognitive ability. So where Elder uses technology is in helping those people make the right decisions. So how do we quickly match carers and people who require care? How do we filter through a list of thousands and thousands of carers to find a handful that are likely to be presentable to the customer and so to the client? So that's where technology enables the people at the center of the care to make those right decisions, and to ensure that the people get the care that they need.
So do you think there's a challenge? I mean, you describe yourselves as a tech-enabled startup. You're not a tech startup. Do you think it's a challenge that not purely tech startups face, is to legitimize their use of technology and to say, no, we are legitimately a tech company. We're not a WeWork that claim to be a tech company when really we're an office company?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's interesting. We have a lot of engineers in the business, and we have a lot of care associates in the business, and we have a lot of carers that work with us as well. I think I think in the care sector, calling yourselves a tech company is not helpful because, our number one value is that we care, and the robots don't care. The robots are incredibly, driven to be efficient and do the one job that they've been designed to do. And that just doesn't and can't work when it is such a sensitive, emotive subject as caring. So we use technology to care better. The robots can't do the caring for us, which is why we need humans to provide the care, and it's why we need humans on the phone to support people when they have any issues or any questions, or of which they obviously have lots of questions, because information around caring and funding for care is so opaque in this country that they're always going to be confused, and they're always going to be sort of misled by other people. So we need humans to help solve those issues directly.
So Elders are a really nice kind of junction between traditional care businesses and businesses in general, but now because it's a recent startup, it's using technology at the heart of its strategy to improve efficiency, which is fantastic to see. It's what we try and encourage in all the companies we work with, and it's great to be working in partnership with you doing that. I guess people often think that technology, if it's just a traditional company, is limited to its website. Elder's got a whole raft of technology under the hood in terms of its platforms, but the website's something you've had a lot of involvement with. What would you say the key innovations have been that you've been part of the implementation of that have made a difference on the marketing and website side?
I think, so at the moment, the website, is a really good hub of getting quite straightforward information to people quickly. Try and Google any questions you've got around care, and it's a million and one contradictory answers, whereas the website, the Elder website, so elder.org, is much better at directing people to content, certainly trying to unpick around funding. So we launched our funding calculator tool a couple of weeks ago, and that is, tries to cut through all of the noise around funding. The government and local health authorities are very cash strapped, so they don't want to give out funding to everyone, so they make it quite hard to apply for. So a lot of people aren't really aware of what funding is available to them. So we spent a long time researching everything, all the different types of funding, and then building a tool that people can use, and it sort of cuts through a lot of the noise, and then we can help support people through that. And we started that launch a couple of weeks ago, as I say, and we want to build on that so that people can go from start to finish with their care funding and their care implementation with Elder and us supporting them and holding their hand through that as well, because that's really what a company should be doing.
Completely. We were having a similar podcast recording with someone in the professional services world recently, and they were describing how a lot of their lead generation, it does come from people searching for this information. It doesn't tend to be picking up the phone on a 9-to-5 basis. You tend to make the decision to get divorced in the early hours of the morning at a weekend, rather than being first thing on your agenda on a Monday morning. So just having that process of publishing this information and making it available to people. I think what's interesting for maybe professional services legal sector is, again, there's this funding question that a lot of people face. And this information, legal aid, what's left of it is pretty non-existent. I'd be really interested to see if there's something that sector could learn from what you've done to make that transparent.
Yeah, I mean, care and funding around care is in a completely different place, in the sense that, if Brexit wasn't a thing, it would be number one on the political agenda for the last couple of years, certainly social care. So the funding is likely to go in a different direction to funding for things like legal aid and protections for vulnerable people in society. So, yeah, I do think when it comes to getting funding, the Arts Council's put another really good example of this. It's like quite hard to understand exactly how people without an organization or a machine behind them already can really understand and unpick this, because, if you are one person who can't afford a lawyer, you're unlikely to have 5 researchers in your family who would go off and research all the possible ways of getting funding and to pay for fighting your case. It's the same in the care industry. It's like, well, if you need care for your mum or your dad, you're not going to have 5 people who can just go off and unpick all the red tape and all the regulation and all the things you need. You need to use digital, and you need to use a tool that can condense all that information and just bring it to you in a really clear, concise, simple way, and then take you through that journey as well. And increasingly as a society, we use digital to make these decisions, and we use the internet obviously as a go-to research tool that, that's only going to become ever more so over the coming decades.
So how did you find what happened this year as a business? What was there a big step change? Was it gradual? Was there a build up from the beginning of the year as news of the pandemic came in?
It was more of a overnight sensation, if you like, in terms of how people's behavior changed. So as a business, we've done pretty well out of coronavirus, in the sense that, people wanted to make care decisions quickly. And we did think at the start of the pandemic that it might have been, people bringing forward decisions from, say, this time of the year through to bringing it through to March, April instead. But that doesn't seem to have been the case. There were definitely a few cases of people wanting, interim solutions very quickly. And so we saw a big spike, and then a bit of a spike in churn off the back of that as well. There were cases of people who wanted to just bring their parents out of care homes and into a home, but wanted a professional carer to look after them as well. So it was really overnight. We didn't see January or February be sort of increasing, sort of different to how we expected it to increase, but in late March it did just hit quite abruptly, and that's really sustained pretty much solidly through the summer as well.
Well, it's lovely to talk to a business that did well out of the pandemic, and I guess the question is what had to be done, or what have you done or considered doing to change what is a maybe considered to be a temporary fix, a quick solution? How do you turn that into a long-term client, or has that naturally happened? Has that happened organically?
It's a really interesting question. It's interesting for many reasons. The main one being that this is a crisis. Obviously, like, the pandemic is, once in a generation thing, or more than that, really, once in 100-year event. But we can't lose sight of the fact that people who are requiring 24-hour care or looking for care for their parents or loved ones, they're in a crisis at that moment. Regardless of COVID-19 or coronavirus, those people are having that crisis there and then, every single day, throughout the year, every single year. There's no sort of big spike to this. Flu season and things like that do play a part, but ultimately the way people's mentality works is they are having that crisis moment. We did learn a lot, for sure, at the start of the pandemic, and continue to now. Communication is absolutely key. Being on top of what the government is saying, however, like I say, I'm a well liberal, so it's like, however, like, confusing and sort of misguided some of that communication's been, we can't pass that on to our customers and our carers. We need to understand what they're trying to say and put it in terms that they understand and what they need to know. So, one of the greatest highlights of it was, when Boris Johnson was making his lockdown speech, within 30 minutes of that ending, we had, 1,000 or so emails out to customers, carers, everyone else involved, and stakeholders, saying exactly what that meant for that individual person, all personalized to the person, all to where they were in the country, what they were going through, who they were caring for, etc., making sure that our carers had proof of employment, so that if they needed to go to shops or move around more freely than other people were going to be allowed to, they had proof of that. So getting that out to them without them having to ask, all these things we learned were really important, and that being quick and concise in our communication is something we will undoubtedly take on, and what we were striving for before. But COVID really gave you an urgency to have to make that happen there and then, because even though I say, we've done pretty well out of coronavirus, that is not an accident. That is other care companies have really struggled in this, and a lot of our competitors have really struggled because they haven't been able to react quickly. They haven't been able to get carers into new homes very quickly. They've just stopped taking on new customers. And so it's technology, really, both communication technology, but also technology that we have built in-house to match carers and customers quickly, or to enable those choices to be made, that has really helped us be successful where a lot of our competitors have struggled.
Yeah. So if you hadn't had those systems in place, the ability to send those emails tailored, loaded in with data from your CRM, from your accounts, then would have been a very different story.
Yeah, 100%. We'd have had people fleeing from us ultimately, because we're unable to deliver that exceptional service. And if you're not delivering an exceptional service when you are charging so much, and you are literally defined by how well you care for people, if you are too busy trying to figure out working from home arrangements rather than communicating to people about what they should do in the circumstance that families want to batter down the door of the loved one's home when they're not allowed to legally, and providing that person with support, then it's not going to reflect well on anyone.
Completely, absolutely. Do you think there's going to be a secondary, potentially longer term shift in the care sector because of the societal change that we're seeing? The traditional kind of reason for sending someone into a care home was, I'm not at home, I can't look at, I get on the train and I go to work every day, and also the expectations of someone around childcare or balancing their working life was different. Do you think we're going to see a similar shift in the way people think of care and elderly care as a result of people spending more time at home?
Yes, but I don't think for the reasons you say. I think people are still going to work, and caring for people is still hard. I think it's interesting. So I've been asked many times by many people over the last 6 or 7 months about the way that what's happened to the care homes, which is a tragedy, and not of the care homes making by any stretch, but if that is going to work well for living care and home care generally. And my response to it is always like, well, there isn't any news here. No one wanted to go into the care home in the first place, so it's not like people ever chosen to go to the care home because they can't look after their loved ones. The reason they go to the care home is that it is the path best trodden. Like everyone else does it. If you're in a crisis and you've got to make a decision in a crisis, you're not going to take on new information or new ideas. You're going to default to what everyone else does and what is expected of you. So whether coronavirus or this crisis changes, I think it will change opinion. And I think people may consider being at home more because they may have been forced to think about it a little bit more before they reach that crisis point. I do also think there has to be a seismic change in, how the government funds social care. And, that is what they're looking into at the moment. And there's a big review at the moment. And that which is decades too late, but, it needs to come soon. That will definitely change the perceptions of care as well, and how people, what choices people make in caring for their elderly relatives or their relatives that need that care.
Do you think there's anything that care homes do better than living care? Is there a real benefit provided by just a community of people that you're living with that you think living care doesn't offer as well?
It's definitely possible. It's a possible interpretation. I've never been in a care home, in terms of I've never stayed in a care home, so I can't really comment on it. There's no doubt that different care options are available for different people, and everyone is different, and everyone deserves care that is right for them. There may be a community aspect of care homes that living care doesn't provide. The one counter I would have to that is, in family units, families are much more likely to visit someone in their own old family home than they are in a care home. Mm-hmm. So having a living carer will keep that person who requires the care as part of that family unit for a lot longer than taking them to a care home. I'm not going to come here and bash the care homes and be like, living care is better than the care homes. I can only talk from how I personally feel about it, but it's, in a care home, you're likely to have one carer for 16 people at a time. In living care, you're going to have one carer for one person. Now, there are benefits to the care home in terms of rotations and consistency of care and things like that, in terms of, the carers in a care home are likely to be the carers in that care home for a long time, whereas living care, the people who are caring in there need a break because it's definitely an intensive form of care. So there is definitely differences, but a care home probably could be better in some individual circumstances. But personally, I market living care, so I'm entirely convinced that living care is the best option for everyone.
I'm just wondering whether there's more that technology could do to enable people who are effectively live alone, but yes, with a carer, but to see and to interact with their peers more.
Yeah, I think communication is certainly, and actually, it's one of the things that people often miss in this is the carer and living care. Like, the carer is also sacrificing a lot to be a living carer. In terms of, they have to be in this other person's home, to look after them. That means they're not having their own social life. They tend to work about 4 weeks on and then 2 weeks off, or 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. That is an intensive period of time. So how we build communities around individual carers and how we integrate them, not just with the family that they're caring for, but also with other carers and their own family. And that's a challenge that we have to take on, that we have been taking on, and trying to ensure that they have a better social life and that they can enjoy caring for people for the joy of caring without having to sacrifice their own family or personal life as well, which is often the preconception that people have about it.
So using your technology to help care for the carer as well as the caree.
Yeah, for sure. It's, we have to care about everyone. We have to care about the staff in the HQ. We have to care about the carers. We have to care about the people we care for. We have to care about, the people who tend to be arranging the care, and their siblings. So good example of that is, my family were arranging care for my grandparents, and it was my uncle that was doing the phone calls to someone like Elder, but my mum and my auntie are also involved in that decision. So as the care company, you have to care for them, and they'll have different opinions, and you have to address those, and they have different concerns, and you have to address those as well. And you have to be there for everyone. It's just, and it's often missed because usually people sort of look at, okay, so this person who requires care is the problem that needs to be dealt with. But that person isn't a problem. They just need support. And that's a completely different mindset, and it changes your approach to the technology that you use, or what you put on your website, or how you interact with people as well.
Well, it tends to be something I guess I've seen a lot more in B2B environments, where the person who's making the purchasing decision isn't necessarily the person paying for it, or the person who's going to take advantage of it is a different person. So just ensuring your communications are strong to everyone, but also that your systems are set up to record these relationships.
Yeah, exactly. I often talk about that. Sorry, I often talk about that, about, it is a B2B mindset, marketing mindset, because there are so many decision makers, and there's not usually one core decision maker. Sure, the person receiving care tends to have the veto over the decision, but there are people in the conversation you do not have a direct relationship with who can also have a veto, or can, make these decisions, or have a very strong voice in there, which makes marketing it incredibly difficult. It's one of the reasons I wanted the job in the first place. It's like, it is incredibly hard to market this, because there's no data point that says, here is someone who has a loved one who now requires 24-hour care. That just doesn't exist. It's not like selling any of the general e-commerce.
So do you tailor your messages and your communications based on the relationship they have to the person?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely, we have to tailor our communications to different people accordingly. People are very different, and they all approach this in completely different in completely different ways. In the sense that you have people who are much more prepared for this, much more comfortable in terms of financing and things like that, who may be coming at it early and in plenty of time. And then you've got the people who are in blind panic as well. And then, but also often what happens is a customer will come to us, in the sense that they are entirely convinced that this is the best option. But you'll have a sister or a brother in the background who is just chuck them in a care home. Just push them in the care home. Let's get this done with. We don't have to worry about it. And that is, and supporting the person who's on the phone to us with managing those relationships is also something we have to support with and we have to advise on. And, we've been doing a lot more since lockdown, and we've all become pretty au fait with Zoom. We've done a lot more of utilizing Zoom to have sort of more family chats and more group chats amongst more stakeholders and being able to reach out to more of them, which has been incredibly helpful, because in the past it had just been this one-to-one relationship with all these other relationships in the background, whereas now we can answer some questions directly, which has been helping a lot.
I think there's a lot that the other people who aren't in the care sector can take away from that, because so many decisions, especially expensive decisions, whether that's buying an extension for the house or buying a service of significant value, it's not a one-person decision. There's always there's one person who's normally had the phone call and then they're discussing it with the wife or the partner or something, and it's an easier conversation for everyone if everyone's involved.
Yeah, 100%. And we can all relate to that, right? I think, my partner, she's been talking about some extravagant purchases, being sort of doing the research, having the phone conversations, and then she comes to me and I have a whole nother batch of questions, and she's like, okay, well, I'll go back to them and ask all these questions as well. And it's, you hit the nail on the head, whether you're buying a car, getting an extension, all of those things, it's the exact same dynamics. And as marketers, we have to figure out how we're going to talk to all of those people. Without, it'd be really easy if someone gave me £100 million marketing budget, I could talk to everyone with it. But the fact of the matter is we don't have those sorts of resources, yet we have to convince a whole swathe of people to take this option that isn't the one that everyone else in the country is taking.
But I guess at least you have the advantage of having the data and these systems in place, and that can mean that you can use your budget effectively. Oh,
yeah, exactly. And, we spend incredibly efficiently, and, we've been increasingly so, because every day you learn more and you can tweak and adapt and invest resources into better things. And, because this is such a long-term play, essentially, in terms of the purchase cycle is very long, but also the numbers are small. It's not like we're going to get 10,000 customers in the next month, so we have to do lots of long period testing as well. So our tests some of them can last like 6 months, and that rigor means that once we get to the end of that 6 months, we've learned a lot, which then we can apply and then see these big gains and these big growths. So there's every day is a school day, I think, is the quote, isn't it? And that's that's completely what it's like working at Elder and working in the care sector, because it's also something that no one else has done very well. There's loads of competitors who have been around 30, 40 years. We've managed to become the second biggest living care company in the country in 4, and 9th fastest tech company in the UK. And with likely next year will be higher than that. So it's a fascinating world.
Well, congratulations again, and evidently whatever you're doing is working well. So well done.
It's fun, I think.
Well, very pleased to hear it, and and look forward to seeing the next stage of it with you.
It's all great.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for talking to me today, Gareth, and best of luck. Speak again soon.
Cheers, Nick. Thanks.
Cheers, bye. Thanks for joining. Remember to subscribe and follow us, and to share today's insights with other businesses you know who want to stay relevant in a digital-first world.